Having AI rules without actual AI security simply does not work. It's a threat most companies haven't considered yet. As highlighted in the Blake blog post, AI governance is becoming an AI security problem. Governance without observability is policy theater, and most organizations are still running the theater. Today, businesses are trying to protect their alpha, or commonly known as market intelligence and IP, with brand new AI tools using old security systems built for a completely different era. Traditional security was made for normal software in the Web 2 era that follows strict, predictable rules. But AI is fundamentally different. It reads human language, makes its own decisions, and can easily manipulate users. The data from the report shows that this gap is creating a massive problem. AI software assistants cause more than 1 out of every 8 reported AI data breaches as companies put them to work. Prompt injection attacks, where hackers trick the AI with hidden commands, caused an estimated $2.3 billion in global losses in 2025. Despite this, today's standard security tools only catch 23% of these clever attacks. This is not just a minor tech glitch. Tricking an AI is the new phishing. But unlike normal phishing, no human needs to click a link for the attack to succeed. As AI moves from just answering questions to actually doing tasks, like sending emails, running code, or changing databases, the danger shoots up for organizations to be phished. This is exactly why standard security fails, and why we need Blake.ai. Blake.ai is a security platform built specifically for eliminating AI threats and attacks. While old firewalls are completely blind to what happens inside an AI tool, Blake.ai monitors and guards the system in real time and attacks new threats. It catches hidden malicious commands, protects your underlying data pipelines, and stops zero-click attacks before the AI can accidentally share corporate secrets and its alpha. Right now, most companies have a major organizational problem. The security team handles the network, the data team handles corporate rules, and the tech team deploys the AI. Because they operate separately, nobody truly owns AI security. Blake.ai brings these teams together by answering the big questions leaders face with AI security. 1. AI asset discovery. It automatically finds shadow AI, tools employees use without telling IT. 2. Model layer controls. It looks inside the AI itself to see exactly how it is retrieving data and making choices. 3. Runtime protection. It safeguards AI tools that actually take action, making sure they stay safe and authorized. Real AI governance means moving past basic spreadsheets and putting real defenses in place. Having rules without AI native security is just a wish, not a real defense plan. Protect your company, your data, and your automated systems today. With the AI Genesis program, visit blake.ai/security to learn more.
Well, Nicholas, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here today. I'm excited about sharing you with the people that we serve, and hopefully we open up a few doors, you and I, and can introduce you to a whole new market out there. How have you been, brother?
Been doing well.
Excellent, excellent. So I'm going to ask you right off the top, a lot of folks, I'm up here in Canada, there's lots of people that don't know you. I'd love to introduce you to them. Tell us about you, where you come from, and where you're at. And then we're going to get into what gets you excited, what your passion is.
I'm right above Atlanta, Georgia. I've been here my entire life. Stayed local, went to college at Kennesaw State University, then went back and got my master's. From there, just really gotten into a lot of the stuff in my local church. I run the scouting program there, so I'm the scouting coordinator. As a Eagle Scout, it was kind of one of those hard to get out of the scouting stuff. Plus, it's an exciting group to work with and always a fun time for sure.
Fantastic. And you also have this keen awareness of where technology's at and what, where we're at, but you can see where we're going, I can tell. And we're going to discover that in the conversation today. But tell us about your technical skills and some of the things that you've developed over the years, some awarenesses that you have as far as where we're at with AI and other technologies.
Yeah. So I started out as a essentially an IT assistant, kind of systems administrator. Doing a lot of that bare bones IT type stuff. I always joked it was 30 minutes of feeling like a genius for 6 months of support was about the ratio of work doing like IT help desk stuff. Um, Moved into a little bit more of like a true software engineering position. Did that for a while, got into blockchain, and then kind of started trending over towards a little more of the DevOpsy platform and then security side with some Mac deployments, as well as getting into just some general defense work across things and working in lots of weird environments there. So it's one of those where working within the Department of Defense, while I was there, it was a lot of pushing for software modernization, essentially. And so as part of that, it came out with AI and everything becoming a bigger and bigger thing. And how do we introduce this and kind of those discussions? And one of the big things for me that I kept seeing was always that because the security mindset just kind of sits there in the back and just kind of screams all the time at everything. Um, but it's one of those where most security companies or security departments really they tend to sit there and they're less worried about the actual implementation. They're worried about more of the enforcement of policies. um, so it's one of those where to me as we move into this AI world, you know you hear all the time, it's these people just drop in these massive internal sales docs that has all of the company's proprietary information. And it's like, hey, Claude, can you tell me about this? And it's great for getting those reports out. But then, it's like, okay, now your internal private corporate data is sitting in another company's data repository, essentially, and you don't have a data processing agreement with them.
Right. And that's companies, you're talking about companies and you're talking obviously governments at all levels. But I got to ask you something because I want to get down. Well, there's going to be a lot of individuals that are going to be tuning in and maybe don't have the experience that you have or the understanding of it that you have. I want to bring it back just a bit here. As an individual citizen, as an individual, maybe you're an entrepreneur, and you're just, or maybe you just lead a local church. Why do you, I just want you to articulate for us why it is from your experience and from your perspective, why is it that people should care about the security side of this new direction we're going in technology?
Yeah. So ultimately, to me, AI models are constantly being trained. AI models are constantly being evolved. And the problem is when you're signing up with OpenAI, Anthropic, Google Gemini, any of these big ones, in the terms of service, you're agreeing to allow them to use your data for training. So, as we continue to see these concerns of, I know there was a big one where I believe it was Claude was essentially generating images that looked very, very similar to a famous pop artist's drawings. The problem is, okay, the AI was technically trained off of those, and the AI is just mimicking that. So, as people are concerned about, maintaining their own intellectual rights and maintaining the rights to general ideas that they've had, dropping it in an AI chatbot per the terms of service, you're letting them have that access. You're letting them have that information. This can also lead to, you know, there's been a few reported incidents where it's, yeah, you're able to kind of ask, like, like, hey, how did this person's sales numbers look the other week? And it happened to be trained off of a file that had that other company's sales numbers.
Oh.
And, all of a sudden it's like, yeah, no, here it is. Um, so just kind of, even as churches, ultimately, you know, with churches, with the Bible, everything has to be taken in context, and even with governments, you take this one line out of context and it's a crazy, terrible thing.
Mm.
So being able to, control that narrative and not let it run rampant on AI somewhere. Um, you know, Plus the other side with government, more so than even individuals, tends to be that, where is the data being processed question. And, you know, ultimately, as an individual, it tends to be harder to be able to kind of demand that, like, what is my data? Where is my data being processed?
Hmm.
Piece, just because you're not coming with millions of dollars worth of contracts for them. But the government generally very much requires um, information on where their data is processed and how their data is processed, because they don't want their data processed. Essentially, in the US, they don't want their data processed outside of US soil.
You mentioned something about like the individuals that are just out there introducing themselves to just kind of street level retail AI, if you don't mind me calling ChatGPT and all those and that terms of service. I actually sort of had this feeling like there are a lot of people that are just signing up for their $24 a month. They're not even reading the terms of service, and they don't really realize that they're actually um, entering a space that is kind of risky and dangerous if for any reason it sort of turned on you. You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to drum up fear about AI. Like I'm not that kind of guy. But it almost feels like they're sitting down at a poker table and they don't know how to play poker, yet everyone else at the table is an absolute shark, like that's the environment that some people are walking in. So I'm interested in knowing the products and services that you provide, that because that's what you are, is you're a solution provider in this space. And what you're doing is you're really trying to help keep people safe, right? I mean, let's just keep you safe, right? Can you just give us a and try, again, try and keep it street level understandable for the new guys, if you don't mind. Because again, we got a lot of new people that are really excited about the potential, and we're talking about the individual. We'll get into governments later, but the new guy, tell us what is the experience like working with you and your products, and how you interact with that so that you can actually remain in that safe place, dealing with really such a powerful tool.
Yeah. So the biggest piece that we provide is we leverage open source models to provide the AI inferencing. And what that means is the open source models, these are ones that you can go see how it was trained, what was it trained off of. You can go audit all of that yourself so that hey, this is the potential bias that this is going to have, this, that, and the other, and you can kind of see the progression of it overall. So we're able to pull those in and provide those as part of it. The other part is by using these, you're able to get your inferences off of things, work with AI, um, but ultimately you're not having to worry about, well, is my data, being used to train something. You're able to leverage these models. They're not training off of your data because the model's not running in the model provider's world. It's running within the Blake ecosystem. So your data stays in our ecosystem with you rather than going out and potentially being used separately. The other pieces are, we attempt to, make sure that what you're giving the AI and what the AI is giving back is a reasonably good response in the sense of, I've seen it a few times, people start dropping into ChatGPT or whatever, and it's like, my computer's doing this, and what do I need to do? Making sure that like, hey, that command that it just told you to ran, that or told you to run, that's going to destroy your computer. Trying to help, kind of provide some of those guardrails and some of those directions as things are coming. But then ultimately, the other piece that we're working on moving towards is, as you're using these, you know, having a good base model and then being able to start and train your own models. So, you can more so train your own AI assistant off of your data that lives in your area within the Blake ecosystem. And again, isn't going out to Anthropic or OpenAI and being used to train potential other data.
Oh, and so you're actually able to almost train up, or eventually, as you say, you're working towards this. You'll have your own security department taking care of your own security because it's trained by you and runs basically and operates as you have directed it to, like you've
Right. So you're
created.
able to right. So you're able to build out your own security department. You're able to build out like, your own personal assistant. You know, so working towards that ability for you can train your agents properly to help you with your day-to-day life off of your data. But again, you're not having to sit there and send it off to a big company that then is going to turn around and use it to train off of.
Now, if you're talking now, let's move from the individual to the government. Let's take a look at government, for example, because I really I would love to know when you're approaching, say, municipal governments, city governments, right? Like, I mean, that's definitely we're talking about size, obviously difference, capacity, and the things they deal with. You're not talking about the unlimited checkbook of the federal government. This isn't the federal government where they could just all of a sudden print money to do whatever they need to accomplish. But municipal governments, with all of their constraints, with all the realities they live within, if you're approaching a municipal government and you're bringing your products and services to them, where would you start if you were going to discover? You want to discover what it is where they're at and what their experiences are and how they might be able to benefit from getting into relationship with you. Where would you start your discovery? What kinds of things would you be asking them to share about about where they're at?
Yeah, I mean, in general, like the first question that I tend to have is, are y'all even using any AI chatbot today? Because that's where most people kind of enter in onto the AI side is with the chatbot. And a lot of times that very quickly becomes a yes, we are, or no, security said no. And so, it's kind of one of those where, like if they are in that, like, yeah, we are, then, being able to kind of dig into a little more of like, what are you doing with it? How are you leveraging it? And then being able to kind of show them, because one of the other big things is, you know, and I've been guilty of this in the past, I stick all my questions onto a higher end Anthropic model and start asking questions when it's like, much cheaper models could handle these questions without an issue. Um, so being able to kind of like look at token usage and kind of being able to be like, hey, we can help open up these models that could handle the requests that you're asking with no problems, and then help you route to these different models as appropriate for your workloads. You know, so kind of looking at it from a little bit more of the, let's save you some money, and then one of the big things that most people here in the US end up in is that, like, are you using my tax funds appropriately? Are you using my tax funds well? And so, being able to help show that fact of like, no, you are trying to maximize every dollar that comes in. On the other side, when you have a security team that's saying no, most of the time it comes from they're saying no because they don't know how to enforce policies. And so, we have a rules engine where, a security team is able to upload an AI security policy or an AI usage policy and then enforce that policy on things. So, one of the examples I was bringing up, a lot of security departments are in this like absolutely no files whatsoever of the type of Excel should ever be uploaded to an AI. That's like the most broad one that I've ever seen, but it comes up all the time. We can enforce that. Now, the other side is being able to come in and, help them enforce that initially, but then starting to be like, okay, what if instead of just saying no completely, we said no to Anthropic and OpenAI models and started to open up these open source models that we can show you how the data is being processed, where the data is stored. And then on the flip side, show that like, yes, we have the data, but we are providing a secure path to the data. And being able to show how, so that kind of comes into this, like, can we open this up so that people can better use these other models to help expedite their work?
Mm.
Ultimately, someone sitting there and thumbing through an Excel document for 4 hours to generate out a very simple dashboard, it's like, no, most AI models can handle that like that. So kind of again, back to that leveraging the tax dollars appropriately, it's like, you have freed up that resource to go work on other things in the massive backlog of work that most governments have.
Right, right. Absolutely. And now when you're entering into an environment like that, if you don't mind me, I'd like to get a sense on the timeline. You're just like you're discovering, obviously, you're asking questions, trying to understand where they're at, kind of find the pain points, and how to introduce the solutions. How long is the discovery? How long would you recommend it would take to with a local municipal government, for example, that it would take you to really understand them well enough to start making recommendations?
Generally, depending on who I'm able to talk to about things would certainly make a difference. Being able to come in and, talk to people that are working with it day in and day out, it's like, like I can very quickly get a sense of what's going on. Whereas, if it's like, like, hey, we need you to schedule time with these people, that can then start to take weeks because people's calendars are just
Oh,
constantly
yeah,
full.
yeah.
Um, so, it's one of those where, I've seen it where it's like, like within 2 or 3 days, I'm like, oh, here's how we can start and optimize a lot of this. But then at the same time, it'll take a month at times, just purely based off of availability of people. Because otherwise, without having those conversations of how are you even using it now, I'm just blankly pitching a product to you that you're like, I don't see the value in how this can make it better. Because really, like it comes down to, in my experience, it's that, the cost of transitioning to something new.
Hmm.
Ultimately, no matter what, it can be cheaper and everything, but there's still that overhead cost of doing it.
Right, right. Well, it must be easy to see the value in it right away, especially if they understand the risks of not doing it, right?
Right. Right. And most of the time, and that's why I love talking to the security department. Just because in general, if you can get the security department going for something and they're excited about something, they can be the big voice because, in general, the security department says no about a lot of stuff.
Mm.
Whereas, if you can get them saying yes about something, most people suddenly are like, oh, the security department wants to move to something.
Yeah.
This might be a good thing.
And are you finding with that there's are we still in the early enough stages? Like, are you seeing fairly well educated and informed? And I'm not asking you to speak down of anybody. I'm just saying, but I mean, where are we at as far as the level of knowledge and understanding and capacity of the security department in most government organizations? I mean, are we there? Are we on top of this, or do they need a little training themselves?
I think it's one of those where it's very much municipality to municipality to different departments within the federal government. You do have the people that are like me and they're massive nerds and they go and play with this stuff in the evenings on their own time and they have the knowledge because they're messing with it in general. And then you have the people that are like, I've done it this way for 40 years and how dare you think that I'm ever going to change my ways. So you have that like massive difference. And the problem is, and this is a problem outside of AI, even, it's a generic problem that security teams run into for everything, frankly. And it's referred to as shadow IT. So, you run into that situation of, the person signed up for an account, swiped their own credit card because it's a piece of software that makes their life easier, but there's no agreement between the place that that person works and that company for data processing. So, ultimately, if you have a lot of, you know, I can guarantee you with very little doubt that, even if a municipality is like, we are not doing anything AI, there's executive assistants that have signed up for a ChatGPT subscription and drop stuff into it regularly throughout the day. And so it's one of those where, in general, the argument gets made of, not doing these things and not paying attention to these things is a bigger risk than working through, what can we do in a sense. Providing something like this, in general, it can become rather than absolutely not, how dare you even think about using it, and potentially losing a solid federal employee. It's like, no, we do offer this. You just need to request it, and then we'll get you set up with an account, and there's a process, and we can provide this to you.
Mhm.
So it's one of those where, it's going to be there. And so I think it's the municipalities that are sitting there and being like, we don't need to worry about this, are the ones that are fooling themselves. Let's be real. I think one of the biggest use cases that I have for AI as of late is I wrote an email and I just need something to help me work through a couple iterations to make it sound less
Right.
one way or the other. And so, they're certainly doing that because it helps make their life easier and helps, better convey information to people.
We've got denominational churches, like large denominational organizations, hundreds, thousands of churches in some. And you've got these integrated systems between churches, and they're I mean they're exposed. I mean they're out there. You've got active engagement online all the time by all their people, emails going back and forth, all this data flying around, not sure where it's all being stored. And I guess there's a I just see a potential there. Really, I see risk. I see risk in that environment. When you're thinking about or talking to these individual organizations or larger organizations, does your thought process change any, or do you still use the same process when you engage with them?
So, in general, most churches don't have a security department, or the security department is really more of a like physical doors and watching security cameras department.
Mhm.
Um, I think one of the big ones was, and being a United Methodist, especially down here in the US, we had that big split a few years ago. And so, a lot of times when I'm talking to churches about something like this, it's a lot of, from my experience, it's a lot of, there's so many rumors out there about so many different religions. Um, and even within the Protestant realm of all the different Protestant denominations, there's different thoughts and feelings. And, it's one of those, a TikTok that's taken completely out of context, that just kind of, it's like, no, that's not what happened. Like, that's not a thing. Um, so, when I'm talking to a church, it's a lot more of, they're not going to worry about data processing as much. They're a nonprofit. That's less of a concern for them. But being able to potentially control how the data is trained, and that's where, kind of looking towards training your own models comes in for them. Being able to say, hey, we have this really solid open source model that you can provide all of your, in the United Methodist Church is our book of discipline. All of our book of discipline, anything from annual conferences, anything like that, where it's like, like this is known information that you could go find online, but this is straight from the church conference as a whole. And now you're able to, rather than, let's be real, someone off the street going like, what does this place believe? You can provide an agent to them, or even internally, you know, because ultimately, when you get into like all the church doctrine and everything, it's a lot of pages and a lot of understanding and a lot of theology. And so rather than having something that's just going to go find whatever on the internet, you're able to say, no, I want you to work off of this data set specifically. Any of the things that you say, anything that you pull needs to come from here, and you need to reference where it came from. So now all of a sudden it's, hey, what does the United Methodists believe? Oh, based on their book of discipline as ratified at this time, this is what they believe. And it's a very clear item. And so, even as other churches are starting to get into this, being able to provide that very consistent, this is our base of knowledge that you can ask questions on, because, it's one of those where with every generation we've seen, there's less of that desire to go find information. My parents used to go and sit there and find books in the library and reading books and copying stuff out of books and everything. I'm very much so, I go to Google and I just type the question in and start going down from there. My children, it's looking like, they're going to ask a AI, what is this? What is that? And so being able to say, hey, rather than talking to these random models that, are going to just go off of whatever's found on the internet and off of the court of public opinion. No, here is what we have worked on in a digestible way for those that are coming up in this age of AI.
And the integrity of the information is maintained, and it's stored. I mean, this is and that's locked down. There's no the AI can't deviate from that because you've trained it in that way to only use that source. I love that. You know what, that makes a lot of sense, because right now we're seeing just across all media, across all kinds of platforms, like you have to confirm source. You have to confirm source when you ask any questions of anything. Am I hearing the revisionist historian perspective on an event, or am I actually receiving the information of what really happened? It's all come into question, and when people don't know what's real and what is real, you can actually define reality. Actually, you can define what's real
And when we've seen, when AI was first kind of starting to boom, someone went in and was like, who's the president? And it was like Elon Musk, because it had been trained off of there was a Twitter post that was like, Elon Musk for president. And like the AI was like, oh, well, obviously Elon's the president. Cool. So, yeah, to me, it's that, auditable piece of what was it trained off of, and being able to, provide this agent was trained off of all of this data, and it's going to link you to the data that you can sit there and go, okay, cool. Yep, that's exactly what it says. There's no questions, nothing. So kind of, providing that known data, but then providing that audit trail all the way through of how it got to that.
Excellent. Well, Nicholas, I'll tell you what, this is what I'd like to do is I want to just leave one last question with you here. And it's just an open question. Nicholas Kammerdiener, Blake AI, what is the thing you want to make sure you leave with anyone who's watching our conversation here today, and who is also likely going to be tuning into it? Like you and I will be talking again, I'm sure, and I'm going to share that information as well. But for now, what do you want to leave in the minds and hearts of the people who might be watching this conversation that you and I are having today as a final thought?
We're continuing to be in the age of data, where your personal data is a commodity. Watch where you're sending it. Make sure that you know where it's going, how they're using it. because, all of a sudden you're giving it away, you're paying to give it to these companies, and then they're able to go make millions off of your data. So make sure that you know how your data is being used.
Excellent. That sums it up. Thanks so much, Nicholas. Appreciate your time today. Thanks for all the work that you're doing, investing in honestly helping to keep us all safe and on the right track with the right information. That's what it is.
Absolutely.
Awesome, brother. Have a great day. I'll look forward to speaking again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.